7 social habits you should quietly eliminate from your life. Stoic philosophy. Have you ever found yourself caught in a life that feels like it's on autopilot, going through the motions, following unwritten rules, and trying to meet expectations you never even agreed to? I used to feel the same way, constantly bending to social pressures, prioritizing what others thought of me, and trying to live up to standards that weren't even my own. But one day, I realized something profound. Many of the social habits we unconsciously adopt aren't meant to empower us. They're meant to keep us playing small, stuck in routines that don't serve our true potential. They keep us in a loop, chasing approval, avoiding discomfort, and settling for less than we deserve. If you're feeling like it's time to step off that hamster wheel and start living on your own terms, then the first step is to identify and quietly eliminate these toxic social habits. It won't be easy. It may feel uncomfortable and might even go against everything you've been taught about how to behave. But the freedom you'll gain by letting go of these habits is life-changing. By embracing the wisdom of Stoic philosophy, you'll learn how to break free from these invisible chains, focus on what truly matters, and align your life with your highest values. Trust me, taking this step is the beginning of a more authentic and fulfilling life. Habit number 1, people-pleasing. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever found yourself saying yes to something you didn't really want to do, simply because you felt it was expected? People-pleasing is one of those habits that sneaks into our lives so subtly, we mistake it for kindness. But in reality, it's self-sabotage disguised as politeness. In a world where everyone seems to have a claim on our time and energy, it's easy to fall into the trap of putting others' needs ahead of our own. This habit, though, isn't just about keeping the peace, it's about avoiding discomfort, rejection, or confrontation. Seneca, the great Stoic philosopher, once said, "He who is brave is free." And nothing could be truer when we talk about breaking free from the chains of people-pleasing. Real courage comes not from bending to others' expectations, but from having the strength to prioritize your own values and boundaries. For most of my life, I thought that saying yes to every request and smoothing over every inconvenience was the way to be generous and kind. But over time, I realized that this behavior wasn't about generosity at all. It was about ensuring I remained likable, that no one would be upset with me, and that I wouldn't have to face the discomfort of someone's displeasure. And so, I twisted myself into a shape that fit everyone else's needs, at the expense of my own peace of mind. But what happens when you constantly prioritize others over yourself? You lose sight of who you are, your self-worth starts to depend on how others perceive you, and worst of all, you grow resentful. Not just of the people you're trying to please, but of yourself for allowing it to happen. As the saying goes, you can't pour from an empty cup. If you're always giving without taking care of yourself, you'll eventually run dry. When I first realized how deeply I was entrenched in the habit of people-pleasing, I started to notice a pattern. The more I tried to accommodate everyone's requests, the less they seemed to value my time. It was as if by constantly saying yes, I was signaling that my energy, my attention, and even my self-worth were up for grabs. This is a dangerous message to send because people will begin to take advantage of your willingness to please. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." And being a good man means not only helping others, but also respecting yourself enough to set boundaries. Breaking free from the cycle of people-pleasing requires a shift in mindset. You need to start saying no when necessary, without guilt or the need to justify your decision. When I began to say no to things that didn't align with my priorities, something interesting happened. The people who genuinely cared about me respected my choices, while those who were only interested in what they could gain from me slowly faded away. This was a revelation. People-pleasing had kept me surrounded by individuals who didn't truly respect or value me. By eliminating this toxic habit, I made room for healthier, more authentic relationships. Remember Epictetus's advice. If you want to improve, Be content to be thought foolish and stupid. This applies perfectly here. At first, saying no might shock people or make them uncomfortable, but this discomfort is a small price to pay for the immense freedom that comes from honoring your own needs and values. It's important to understand that people-pleasing isn't a selfless act. It's rooted in the fear of rejection, of not being liked, and of facing confrontation. But when you stop fearing those things and start embracing the discomfort that comes with standing up for yourself, you begin to live with authenticity. You stop bending to every whim and start making decisions that are aligned with your true self. The Stoics believed in focusing only on what we can control, and other people's reactions are beyond our control. So why should we let their opinions dictate our actions? Instead, focus on your internal state, how you feel when you say yes or no, and let that guide you. In modern life, especially in our hyper-connected world, it's easy to get swept up in the need to be agreeable. Social media makes this even worse, as we're constantly bombarded with messages telling us to say yes, to be available, to never miss an opportunity. But saying yes to everything isn't the way to live a meaningful life. It's about saying yes to the things that matter and no to the things that don't. And here's where the power of Stoic philosophy truly comes into play. By eliminating people-pleasing, you reclaim your power. You no longer allow external forces to dictate your internal peace. You focus on your own path, your own virtues, and you live in alignment with those. Now, this doesn't mean you should be selfish or inconsiderate of others. The Stoics were all about balance and living in harmony with others. But they also believed in the importance of self-respect and maintaining inner peace. Seneca's words, "True happiness is to enjoy the present, without anxious dependence upon the future," remind us that living in fear of how others will react is no way to find happiness. Instead, focus on how you feel about your choices in the present moment and let go of the anxiety about what others might think. Habit number 2, holding grudges. Holding grudges is a habit that sneaks up on us, often without us even realizing it. We've all been wronged at some point, whether by a friend, family member, or colleague, and it's completely normal to feel hurt or angry when someone betrays our trust or causes us pain. However, it's when we cling to that hurt, nurturing it, letting it grow into bitterness, that it becomes a grudge. Holding on to that grudge can feel like a way to protect ourselves from being hurt again, but the reality is that it only ends up hurting us. Marcus Aurelius, a renowned Stoic philosopher, once said, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." His words remind us that holding a grudge doesn't punish the person who wronged us. It only drags us deeper into a cycle of negativity, preventing us from moving forward and living in peace. The grudge becomes a heavy burden we carry, one that weighs down our thoughts and emotions, impacting our overall well-being. Consider for a moment a story from modern life. A man I knew had a falling out with his brother over a business deal gone wrong. For years, they didn't speak to each other. Every family gathering was tense, and the man's anger toward his brother consumed him. He couldn't let go of the betrayal he felt, and as a result, he began to isolate himself, cutting ties with friends and other family members who didn't share his anger. What he didn't realize was that while his brother had moved on and continued with his life, he was stuck in a loop of resentment. His grudge became the focal point of his life, preventing him from enjoying relationships, opportunities, and even moments of joy. What happened next is not uncommon. His health began to decline, his business suffered, and eventually he found himself alone, still clinging to the grudge while his brother had long forgotten the issue. What's the lesson here? Holding a grudge is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to suffer. Grudges often stem from our need for justice or control. When someone hurts us, it feels unfair, and we hold on to that feeling, convinced that our anger will somehow make the situation right. But the truth is, we have no control over other people's actions, only our response to them. Stoic philosophy teaches that the only thing within our control is our own mind. As Epictetus once said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." If we spend our lives reacting with anger and bitterness, we give away our power. We let the person who hurt us continue to control our thoughts, emotions, and even our future. So, why do we cling to grudges when they cause us so much harm? Is it because we're afraid that letting go means we're excusing the hurt? Or perhaps do we hold on because it feels like the only way to stay connected to the past, to make sense of the pain? Ask yourself this: how long are you willing to let someone else's actions dictate your peace of mind? How long are you willing to stay chained to the past, unable to move forward? Forgiveness doesn't mean that we forget or excuse what happened. It doesn't mean we allow people to continue to hurt us. Instead, it's about releasing the hold that the past has on us. When you forgive, you're not doing it for the other person. You're doing it for yourself. You're choosing to no longer let the hurt control your present and future. Consider this: when we let go of a grudge, we free ourselves. We reclaim the energy we spent on negative emotions and redirect it towards things that bring us joy, fulfillment, and growth. The Stoics believed in focusing on what we can control and letting go of the rest. This includes letting go of grudges and resentment, which are emotions we hold on to in the false belief that they will somehow fix what happened. In today's world, holding grudges can manifest in more ways than just personal relationships. We see it on social media, in political divides, and even in the workplace. How many times have you seen people harbor resentment over an online disagreement, letting it fester to the point where they carry that negativity into their daily lives? Or perhaps at work, where a minor slight or unacknowledged effort leads to long-term bitterness. These grudges are like invisible chains, limiting our ability to grow, connect, and find happiness. It's as if we're carrying a backpack full of rocks, weighed down by the past, unable to move freely into the future. But what if you chose to set that backpack down? What if, instead of holding on to the grudge, you allowed yourself the peace of mind that comes with letting go? In Stoicism, letting go of grudges is an act of self-discipline. It's a choice to prioritize inner peace over external conflicts. It doesn't mean you have to rekindle relationships with those who have wronged you or pretend that nothing happened. Instead, it's about recognizing that by holding on to the anger, you're allowing it to shape your life in ways that serve no purpose. Imagine what you could accomplish if you took all the energy you've spent on grudges and directed it toward your goals, your passions, and your personal growth. What would your life look like if you were no longer held back by the past? Letting go of grudges requires courage and a deep understanding that your peace is more valuable than any conflict. It's about accepting that we cannot change what has happened, but we can change how we choose to move forward. By releasing the grudge, you allow yourself the freedom to live without the weight of bitterness. You open yourself up to new experiences, relationships, and opportunities that were previously blocked by your focus on the past. Marcus Aurelius wisely advised, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." If your thoughts are consumed with resentment, how can you expect to live a happy, fulfilled life? Habit number 3, ignoring red flags in relationships. Ignoring red flags in relationships is one of the most damaging habits we can develop, yet it's one that many of us fall into without even realizing it. You might be in a relationship, whether romantic, friendship, or even professional, where something feels off. There's that gut feeling telling you something isn't right. But instead of addressing it, you brush it aside. Why do we do this? We convince ourselves that the problems will go away on their own, that maybe we're overreacting or that it's not as bad as it seems. But deep down, we know the truth. Those red flags are there for a reason, and ignoring them doesn't make them disappear. It just delays the inevitable. As the Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Ignoring red flags is a reaction that avoids dealing with the reality of a situation, and in doing so, we often end up causing ourselves more harm in the long run. Think about it. How many times have you looked back on a failed relationship or a partnership that went wrong and realized that the warning signs were there all along? Maybe it was small things at first, like disrespectful comments or inconsistencies in their actions. But instead of addressing those issues, you chose to look the other way because you didn't want to disrupt the relationship or because you were afraid of being alone. Ignoring red flags is like driving with your eyes closed. You might go a little while without a problem, but eventually you're going to crash. The Stoic principle of living in accordance with nature teaches us that we must face reality head-on, no matter how uncomfortable it may be. When we ignore red flags, we're rejecting this truth, choosing instead to live in denial, which only causes more pain later on. A modern example of this might be someone staying in a toxic relationship because they hope things will change. Imagine someone in a relationship where their partner constantly makes hurtful remarks or breaks promises. They might think, it's just a phase, or everyone has flaws, but over time, these behaviors chip away at their self-esteem and emotional well-being. The truth is, red flags don't disappear. They grow larger and more destructive the longer they're ignored. The longer you stay in a relationship where red flags are present, the more damage you'll endure, and the harder it will be to recover when things inevitably fall apart. This is why it's crucial to recognize and address these warning signs early on. Ask yourself, are you overlooking something in your relationships because you're afraid of confronting the truth? What are you risking by staying silent? There's a reason we have instincts and intuition. These internal signals are there to protect us. When you feel that something is off, it's not just a random feeling. It's your mind and body telling you to pay attention. The Stoics believed in rational thinking and aligning your actions with reason. So why would we ignore those rational warnings in our relationships? It's because we often let emotions like fear, attachment, or even hope cloud our judgment. We tell ourselves that things will get better or that we can fix the person or the situation. But the Stoics remind us that we cannot control others, only ourselves. As Marcus Aurelius wisely put it, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. We can't change another person's behavior, but we can change how we respond to it. Ignoring red flags is a way of giving up that power and allowing external factors to dictate our happiness. Let's be clear, addressing red flags doesn't mean being hypercritical or expecting perfection from others. Everyone has flaws, and relationships require compromise. However, there's a difference between accepting minor imperfections and tolerating behavior that violates your boundaries, disrespects you, or threatens your well-being. The key is to have the courage to face those uncomfortable conversations and decisions, rather than pretending the problems don't exist. It might be difficult to confront these issues, but think about what you're preserving by doing so. Your self-respect, your emotional health, and your long-term happiness. In the modern world, with social media and the constant pressure to maintain appearances, it's easy to get swept up in the idea that you should stick with relationships for the sake of not being alone or not wanting to seem like a failure. But the Stoics teach us that our happiness doesn't come from others. It comes from living in alignment with our values and truth. When you ignore red flags, you're not just betraying yourself. You're allowing a toxic relationship to erode the very foundation of your well-being. A famous quote by Seneca says, "Sometimes even to live is an act of courage." And in relationships, sometimes it takes courage to walk away, to stand up for yourself, and to say, "This isn't working for me," even when it feels easier to stay. What are the red flags in your life right now that you might be ignoring? Are you staying in a relationship out of fear or comfort, rather than because it truly serves your growth and well-being? Take a moment to reflect on how much energy you're spending trying to ignore problems, hoping they'll go away on their own. Now ask yourself, what would happen if you faced those issues head-on? Yes, it might lead to difficult conversations, or even the end of the relationship. But wouldn't it be better to confront the truth now, rather than let things spiral further out of control? By facing the red flags, you allow yourself the opportunity to either fix the problem or walk away with your dignity intact. It's a way of taking control of your life, your emotions, and your future. You deserve relationships where you feel valued, respected, and safe, not ones where you're constantly questioning whether things will get better. The Stoics teach us the value of resilience and inner strength, but they also teach us the importance of honesty and facing reality, no matter how hard it might be. Thank you for being here and watching this video. Now, I'd love to hear your thoughts. What habits do you think hold people back the most, and how have you managed to overcome any of these in your own life? If you're not sure how to comment, feel free to share which of the 7 habits resonated with you the most and why. Your insights might inspire someone else on their own journey. Habit number 4, staying silent on important issues. Staying silent on important issues is often seen as the easiest path to take. After all, avoiding conflict and maintaining peace seems preferable to speaking out and risking friction, doesn't it? But here's the harsh reality. Staying silent, especially when something truly matters, is not neutrality. It's complicity. Every time you hold back your voice in the face of injustice, wrongdoing, or moral dilemmas, you are choosing to let that issue persist unchallenged. As Marcus Aurelius said, waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. To be a good man, to live a life of virtue, requires that you stand up for what is right, even when it's uncomfortable. Silence in these moments is a betrayal of both your values and the greater good you could have influenced. Think about the modern world we live in, filled with social media, workplace dynamics, family disagreements, and societal pressures. The urge to remain quiet when something feels wrong can be overwhelming. Perhaps you've seen a colleague mistreated at work, but chose not to say anything for fear of jeopardizing your position. Or maybe you've witnessed a loved one struggle with a serious issue but stayed silent, hoping the problem would resolve itself. We tell ourselves that staying quiet is a form of peacekeeping, but in reality, it's self-preservation, often at the cost of our integrity. Epictetus once said, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak, and while listening is crucial, so is knowing when to use your voice to stand up for what matters." In a professional setting, for example, staying silent can mean watching unethical behavior unfold and letting it continue. I once knew a man who worked for a large corporation, and over the years, he noticed questionable practices in how the company handled its finances. Instead of speaking up, he kept his head down, fearful that rocking the boat might cost him his job. But over time, his silence began to weigh on him. He knew what was happening was wrong, but his fear of the consequences kept him mute. Eventually, the truth came out, and while the company faced serious legal consequences, he couldn't shake the guilt of knowing he could have spoken up earlier. His silence had been part of the problem. The lesson here is clear. Silence doesn't protect you. It diminishes you. It allows wrongdoing to continue unchallenged, and in the end, you have to live with the consequences of your inaction. Silence in personal relationships can be just as damaging. Think about the times you've stayed quiet, when you should have spoken up with a partner, a friend, or a family member. Maybe it was because you didn't want to start an argument, or perhaps you were worried about damaging the relationship. But by staying silent, you allowed resentment, misunderstanding, or even harmful behavior to fester. Seneca once said, "A sword never kills anybody. It is a tool in the killer's hand." Silence is much like that sword. It can be a tool for harm if wielded at the wrong time. When you stay silent in moments that demand honesty, you contribute to the deterioration of trust and openness in your relationships. Stoicism teaches us that living a virtuous life is about aligning our actions with our principles, and that includes speaking out when necessary. It's easy to stay silent and avoid discomfort, but growth doesn't happen in comfort zones. The courage to speak up is one of the most important virtues we can develop. In today's world, where injustice and wrongdoing can seem overwhelming, it's tempting to think that our voice won't make a difference. But the truth is, even the smallest voice can create ripples of change. When you stand up for what is right, whether in your personal life or in the larger society, you're living in alignment with your highest values. You're showing the world and yourself that you're willing to face discomfort for the sake of integrity. Ask yourself this: How often have you stayed silent on important issues because it felt easier? How many times have you looked back on those moments and wished you had spoken up? The regret of silence can be much heavier than the discomfort of speaking your truth. The Stoic principle of living according to nature means living according to reason and virtue, and when we stay silent in the face of wrongdoing, we are denying those very principles. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." This also means that if something is not right, we must speak against it. The lesson here is simple. Don't let fear or complacency keep you silent. Speak up when it matters because your voice, no matter how small, can make a difference. Whether it's in your workplace, your relationships, or society at large, staying silent on important issues is a habit that limits your potential and harms those around you. Be the person who has the courage to stand up for what's right, because in doing so, you not only change the world around you but also live a life aligned with your highest virtues. And as the Stoics remind us, living virtuously is the key to living a life of true fulfillment. Habit number 5. Seeking constant entertainment. In today's world, entertainment is everywhere. From the endless scroll of social media to binge-watching entire seasons of TV shows in one sitting, we are surrounded by distractions at every turn. It's easy to fall into the habit of seeking constant entertainment, and many of us do so without even realizing it. Whether it's checking our phones at every spare moment or filling every quiet hour with some form of entertainment, this habit has quietly become a way of life. But what happens when we're always chasing the next distraction? We lose touch with ourselves, we stop thinking deeply, and we avoid facing the parts of our lives that may need attention. As the Stoic philosopher Seneca once said, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." The time we waste chasing entertainment is time we could be spending in reflection, growth, or simply being present in our own lives. Take a look at modern life. How often do we use entertainment as a way to escape? After a long day at work, many of us immediately turn to TV, social media, or video games to unwind. And while there's nothing wrong with enjoying entertainment in moderation, the problem arises when we use it as a constant distraction from our own thoughts or responsibilities. A good example is a man I know who, after a stressful day at work, would come home and immediately turn on the TV. What started as a way to relax soon became a daily ritual. Before he knew it, hours were slipping away every night, and he wasn't addressing the things in his life that needed his attention, his career goals, his health, and even his relationships. The constant stream of entertainment was like a bandage, covering up the real issues but never fixing them. And, over time, the avoidance of his real life caught up with him. He found himself feeling stuck, unfulfilled, and unsure of why his life wasn't progressing the way he had hoped. This is the danger of seeking constant entertainment. It becomes an easy way to avoid the uncomfortable work of self-improvement and growth. Ask yourself, how often do you reach for your phone or turn on the TV simply because you don't want to deal with what's happening in your own mind? What are you avoiding by constantly filling your time with entertainment? Stoicism teaches us to live in accordance with reason, to confront our thoughts and actions with honesty, and to avoid being slaves to distractions. Marcus Aurelius, one of the great Stoic emperors, reminded us to limit yourself to the present. In other words, stop running from the present moment by burying yourself in distractions. The present is where life happens, where decisions are made, and where change can occur. If we're always filling every moment with entertainment, we miss the opportunity to be truly present and to ask ourselves important questions. Am I living the life I want? Are my actions aligned with my goals and values? Constant entertainment keeps us from these deeper reflections. It numbs us to the reality of our lives and makes it harder to deal with discomfort. But discomfort is where growth happens. As Epictetus once said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." And how can we master ourselves if we're constantly distracted? When we seek entertainment every time we're bored or uncomfortable, we're avoiding the very situations that could lead to personal growth. We're opting for temporary pleasure over lasting fulfillment, and we're missing out on the richness of a life lived with intention. Think about this. When was the last time you allowed yourself to sit in silence, without reaching for your phone, without turning on music or the TV? For many of us, the idea of being alone with our thoughts is terrifying. But in that silence, we find clarity. In those moments without distractions, we can confront what's really going on in our lives. What are we running from? What changes do we need to make? Without these moments of reflection, we can drift through life without purpose, simply reacting to the world around us instead of actively shaping our own path. In a world that thrives on keeping us entertained, breaking this habit requires mindfulness and intention. It means consciously choosing to spend time without distractions, to allow boredom to arise and to sit with our thoughts instead of running from them. It means finding balance in our lives, where entertainment serves as a way to relax, not as a way to escape reality. You might start by setting small goals, like turning off your phone for an hour each day, taking a walk without headphones, or spending time journaling your thoughts. These small steps help to build the muscle of reflection, making it easier to embrace silence and presence in your daily life. Habit number 6, oversharing personal details. In today's world, it's easy to fall into the habit of oversharing personal details. Social media invites us to broadcast every aspect of our lives, from our successes to our struggles, from the mundane to the deeply personal, and it can feel almost natural to share intimate parts of ourselves with the world. But here's the problem. Oversharing often does more harm than good, both to our relationships and to our sense of self. While we might believe that sharing more makes us more relatable or likable, it can actually erode trust, cause discomfort, and even make us vulnerable in ways we never intended. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus wisely advised, keep silence for the most part, and speak only when you must, and then, briefly. His words remind us of the power in reserving our thoughts and details for the right time and the right people, rather than freely giving them to anyone who will listen. Oversharing doesn't just happen on social media. It can happen in conversations with friends, co-workers, or even acquaintances. Often, it starts with good intentions. We want to connect, to be understood, or to feel validated. But oversharing too much too soon can backfire. Think about a time when you've shared something deeply personal with someone, only to later regret it. Maybe you felt exposed, or maybe the person didn't respond the way you expected. This is one of the main dangers of oversharing. It places the weight of our emotions and experiences in the hands of others, who may not be equipped to handle them. And while we may think we're building a connection by being open, what we're actually doing is giving away too much of ourselves without ensuring the other person has earned that level of trust. Ask yourself, have you ever regretted sharing too much too soon with someone who wasn't truly close to you? A great example of this in modern life is how many of us use social media. We see people sharing everything from their relationship problems to their medical diagnoses, all for public consumption. At first glance, it might seem like openness or transparency, but in reality, it often reflects a need for attention or validation. It can also make us vulnerable to judgment, criticism, and even manipulation from others who don't have our best interests at heart. As Seneca said, associate with those who will make a better man of you. Sharing personal details should be reserved for people who truly care about us and who have earned the right to hear our stories, not the masses on social media or casual acquaintances. The impulse to overshare often stems from the desire for connection. We live in a world where everyone is constantly trying to be seen and heard, and sometimes it feels like the more we reveal, the more will be noticed. But connection doesn't come from broadcasting every detail of our lives. It comes from authentic relationships built on trust and mutual respect. When we share personal details with the right people, in the right context, we build intimacy. But when we share with everyone, we dilute the value of those experiences. Think of it this way. Sharing personal stories and emotions is like giving away pieces of ourselves. Wouldn't you want to make sure that those pieces are handled with care? Marcus Aurelius once said, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." If we constantly share our inner world with people who don't truly value it, we risk allowing their judgment, opinions, and reactions to shape how we see ourselves. Another aspect of oversharing is that it can be emotionally exhausting, both for us and for those on the receiving end. When we unload our deepest thoughts, feelings, or problems onto someone, we're often asking them to carry a burden they may not be prepared for. This can strain relationships, especially if the other person feels overwhelmed or unsure of how to respond. It's important to remember that not every conversation needs to be about our most personal struggles. Sometimes it's better to hold back and reflect before sharing. The Stoic principle of moderation applies here. Just because we can share doesn't mean we should. There's power in holding some things back, in keeping certain parts of our lives private until the time and place are right. So how can we strike the balance between being open and oversharing? The key lies in discernment. Before sharing something personal, take a moment to consider why you're sharing it and who you're sharing it with. Are you seeking validation or connection? Is the person you're sharing with someone who has proven they can be trusted? And most importantly, will sharing this detail enhance the relationship, or will it leave you feeling vulnerable? By asking yourself these questions, you can avoid the regret and discomfort that often follow oversharing. The goal is not to build walls around your emotions, but to ensure that when you do open up, it's with the right people, for the right. If you've made it this far, you're already taking steps toward a stronger, more intentional life. Drop a comment saying, "I choose growth," to show your commitment to eliminating these habits and living with purpose. Stay tuned. Your best self is just around the corner. Habit number 7. Constantly seeking approval. How often do you find yourself making decisions based not on what you truly want, but on what others might think of you? Constantly seeking approval is a habit many of us have fallen into, often without even realizing it. It's that subtle, creeping need to be validated by those around us, whether it's our friends, family, co-workers, or even strangers on social media. And yet, this habit can be incredibly damaging, quietly eroding our sense of self and leading us away from a life of authenticity. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus said it best: "If you wish to improve, be content to appear clueless or stupid in extraneous matters." This means learning to let go of the need for external validation and trusting that true improvement comes from within, not from the opinions of others. At first glance, seeking approval seems harmless, even normal. After all, we live in a world that encourages feedback, likes, and external praise. It's natural to want to feel accepted and validated. But the problem begins when the desire for approval becomes a constant force driving your actions. You might say yes to things you don't want to do, or you may shape your personality, career, or even relationships based on what others expect from you. When this happens, you lose sight of who you are and what you want. Your decisions stop being about what's right for you and start being about what will please others. This is where Stoic wisdom becomes crucial. The Stoics believed that our happiness and fulfillment depend on our ability to control our inner world, rather than being swayed by external forces. As Marcus Aurelius reminds us, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. In seeking constant approval, we hand over the reins of our happiness to others, making us vulnerable to their opinions and judgments. Think about how this plays out in modern life. Have you ever posted something on social media, only to check back obsessively to see how many likes or comments it received? Or perhaps you've agreed to go along with a group decision, even when it didn't align with your values, just to avoid conflict or rejection. These are all subtle ways we seek approval, ways we place the opinions of others above our own well-being. And while it might feel good in the moment to get that validation, it doesn't last. The moment the praise fades, we're left feeling empty, constantly searching for the next source of approval to fill the void. This is the dangerous cycle of approval seeking. It becomes never-ending because we're looking for something external to satisfy an internal need. Now ask yourself, how much of your life have you spent chasing approval? How often have you held back from saying what you really think or doing what you really want because you were worried about how others would react? The reality is, the more you seek approval, the further you stray from your authentic self. Seneca, another great Stoic philosopher, wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, that is poor." This can apply just as much to approval as it does to material wealth. When we constantly crave approval, we live in a state of lack, always needing more validation to feel whole. One of the most profound lessons we can take from Stoic philosophy is the idea that we are in control of how we respond to the world around us, but we are not in control of how the world responds to us. This means we have no control over whether others approve of us, but we can control whether or not their approval is something we seek or value. The Stoics remind us that true contentment comes from within, from living in alignment with our own values, rather than bending to fit someone else's expectations. Epictetus said, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." The fewer desires you have for external validation, the freer you become. In today's world, breaking free from the habit of seeking approval is harder than ever. Social media has turned validation into a currency, and many of us have unknowingly become dependent on likes, comments, and followers to measure our worth. But here's the thing, your value is not determined by how many people approve of you or agree with you. Your worth is intrinsic. No number of likes or external praise can truly satisfy the need for self-acceptance and inner peace. The key is to shift your focus away from external validation, and instead ask yourself, what do I truly want? Am I living according to my values? Am I doing what makes me feel fulfilled? These are the questions that matter. The process of letting go of approval seeking can be uncomfortable, especially at first. You might feel vulnerable or exposed, and others may not always respond positively to the new boundaries you set. But remember, true growth happens outside of your comfort zone. The more you practice making decisions based on your own needs and values, rather than the opinions of others, the more confident and grounded you'll become. You'll begin to see that the opinions of others, while sometimes helpful, do not define who you are. By letting go of the need for constant approval, you free yourself from the pressures of society, and you start to live a life that is truly your own. As you reflect on these habits, whether it's people-pleasing, holding grudges, or seeking constant entertainment, remember that real change begins in the quiet moments when you choose to align with your values, not for validation, but for personal growth. Start eliminating these habits one step at a time and notice how your life begins to transform, becoming more peaceful and true to who you really are. How will you start applying these Stoic principles to your daily life? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Stoic in Your Life for more insights on how to live with purpose and inner strength.